So in today's interaction, the topic that we're going to talk about is overcoming self-doubt. And my intention for today's session is to help you perform at your optimum level and not underperform. And one of the biggest reasons that is a barrier in performance is self-doubt. So, what are these self doubts? People often struggle with having doubts about how worthy they are, whether they're worthy enough to be on the team, or even about life in general, whether they will have a successful career ahead of them, or whether they will get a job at the company that they want to, or get into the college that they want to. So, self doubt is something that can really plague a person's mind, not only in sports but it can plague your mind in any aspect of your life. So often statements such as, she's number one, there's no way I can beat her. I know I'm going to mess up today. I'm going to embarrass myself in front of everyone today. These are examples of self doubt. And you know what the interesting thing about self doubt is? It's often made up of irrational, exaggerated negative thoughts. Yes, that inner voice in your head that tells you aren't good enough can actually become pretty convincing. And it doesn't really matter if that doubt is coming from you within yourself or if it's other people's negative comments which have begun and which have begun to affect you. And especially at those times, self-doubt is very crippling when it just constantly plays over and over again in your head without having a way out. So it affects your psyche, it affects your nerves, it affects your body movements, the way you control your body movements or the fluidity of your stroke. And the longer you let these doubts fester, it will prevent you from performing at your best potential. It will prevent you from being the best version of yourself. So, I'm going to talk about some very simple tips today that you can incorporate into practicing every day to overcome your self doubt. I once worked with a national level badminton player who would practice really hard. He was very driven and talented. And especially in individual and state events, he would ace it. But you know what happened? Every time he played at the nationals, he just didn't excel. And so he was really struggling, as well as his coach. They were struggling with, what's going on? Why is it that he's performing really well at certain competitions, but at others he's not, despite the fact that he was working hard and he was really dedicated to the sport. And what we found was, his inner voices would suddenly play up in these team events that he doesn't deserve to be on the team and that he's a failure. And because of him, the team is going to lose. And all of this happened because he had lost a major point in a team event and the team lost. And he just couldn't let go. And he felt he had let his team down. So this is how inner voice, starts affecting our psyche, our game, the way we're playing during the match or during competition. So let's talk about this, these inner voices and how we can combat it. So one of the most powerful ways to combat these negative inner voices, these self-doubts, is the power of self-talk. So I'm sure you've heard this term before, but let me explain to you how you yourself today can practice it. So, often when you're playing, when you're practicing, you'll find that there's a big difference between your skill, your game while you're practicing and where you want to be during a competition. And often you will find that, there are a lot of questions surrounding your capabilities and your abilities that happens during a competition. And mind you, this doesn't happen only when you're making mistakes. It also happens when you can have a lead of 7, 8 strokes or 7, 8 points, because that creates pressure to keep up the performance from getting no point wrong. So that pressure can also create a lot of negative inner voices. So sometimes that pressure can, spin you into a cycle of doubt and negativity that absolutely crushes your confidence as well as your performance. And what I've also come across in my work with a lot of student athletes, which a lot of you are in the audience today, is the psychological strain of balancing life, school, as well as your sport. It creates a huge challenge on the ability of managing time. As well as, you have all the other external pressures that anybody in your age is sort of struggling with. So whether it's about the stress at school, whether it's about, missing out on academics because you're at tournaments or you're at practice, or sometimes, fearing that your boyfriend or girlfriend may dump you or break up with you because you're not giving adequate time. Or it could be about some disagreements with your coach, or it could even be about you trying to improve a stroke, improve a certain aspect of yourself, and you're just not being able to get there. And so let's address these today, right? So, what happens when you have all of this psychological strain on your mind and that plays out during the game? And typically, what will happen is you'll start having thoughts of, I can't handle pressure, I'm going to lose, or I'm not going to be able to bounce back. And what this does is it interferes greatly with your performance. So instead of getting your mind to think about how to get the next shot to be what you want it to be, how you want to get better, how to think about winning and creating strategies for those, you actually get consumed by these thoughts of self-depreciation, thoughts which are essentially telling you that you're not good enough. And naturally, that's going to do no good to your performance. So what should you do at that time is what I'm going to tell you right now. So ideally, think about the same situation, and if your friend was in it, what would you say to a friend? Would you tell your friend, yeah, you can't handle pressure. There's no way you can bounce back from that. Definitely not, right? You would say something to your friend that's very uplifting. You would say something to your friend that's motivating. You would say something to your friend to stop thinking that way and focus on their goal and focus on what they're there to do. And this is exactly what you need to say to yourself at that time. Say to yourself what you would say to a friend. Another thing that you can also say to yourself is what you would like to hear from your coach or from a loved one at the time. You don't want your coach to tell you, you're not good enough. I'm not going to keep you on the team. You can't handle pressure. You're just not getting it. You don't want to hear these things from your coach or from a loved one. You want to hear from them that you're amazing, that you're brilliant, that you need to put in effort and it will happen. The game is in your control. Focus, get it right. Keep your mind calm, keep your nerves calm so you can get your swing smooth. You can get the swing that you want. So all of these things that you want to hear from your coach, especially, say them to yourself. And it would really help if you start saying these to yourself from now on. So what you can typically do is think about a couple of these doubts that really plays on in your mind pre-game and post-game. But also what you want to do is think about those doubts that comes into your mind during the game. And that is the key part for you to identify because these are the same sort of cycles and statements of doubt that will come into your mind every time you're not that you feel like you're falling short. So once you have it down on paper, either you can discuss it with your coach, discuss it with your mentor, or discuss it with a professional psychologist who can really help you dissect these doubts and find more uplifting versions of what to say to yourself. And the more you can use this time in the lockdown to create this reservoir of resource for yourself, it can really help you on court or on the golf green when you get back to it. Another great technique to sort of combat these self-talks and which works really amazingly in an instant is to remind yourself of your past achievements. right in that moment when you feel like a failure, when you feel like you're going to lose, when you feel like you've lost the game, remind yourself of past achievements, of any time when you turned the game around, of any time when you got a really difficult part in, of any time when you were really proud of the way you played. Any small or big achievement at that moment, and those feelings can make you feel that immediate boost of motivation that you need at the time. So remind yourself of that moment, of those feelings, and you will feel that instant motivation that you need in order to get through. So, like I said, practice these, identify these from before so that your mind is used to this resource. It's already part of your mental toughness, so you can access that part of your mind very, very quickly in these moments of high pressure. What you also want to do and, sort of think about right now is about your mistakes, right? So we've talked about the times when you could have perhaps had a really easy putt, like it could have been a 1 foot or 1.5 foot away and you missed it, and you might find yourself constantly dwelling on it, or you might find sometimes choosing the wrong the angle to hit from, or not trusting your gut instinct, or not listening to someone else. So whatever these mistakes are, if you constantly let yourself dwell on them, rude, it's not going to help you because it's not giving you any solution. But what you want to do is to again learn from these mistakes. It's only when you learn from these mistakes can you put it in practice. So discuss it with your coach, discuss it with your mentor, or maybe just put it down on paper like a plan, and put it down on paper as a plan and look at what was the mistake you made and what is it that you can do the next time not to repeat it. And create a plan for paper that you can translate on the golf course or in whichever aspect of your life the next time you're in that situation. And it's also very helpful to accept that you did make these mistakes and not be too harsh and critical of yourself. Because remember, our greatest learnings in life comes from those times that we've made some mistakes, when we've faltered somewhere. So if you reflect back for a moment and think about some really strong skills that you have, it's probably coming from those times that you've paid attention on improving that in yourself before, either from a mistake you made or a feedback that you had received from someone valuable. So, it's really important also at this time, given that there's a lockdown and the COVID-19 situation is bringing in a lot of uncertainty. Many people are struggling with, keeping themselves upbeat. So from thinking about all doomsday and gloom and consuming negative COVID news all the time, or thinking about, negative aspects of yourself or your weaknesses, keep your mind active. Staying active mentally can really, really help you in all aspects of your life. So, you can do some concentration exercises that can help you build focus. You can also include meditation or mindfulness practices that can help you stay calm and stay relaxed. Use this time to build your mental toughness. It's a very critical aspect to get you through life. Being mentally tough will help you stay resilient. And resilience is a very key aspect, is a very key skill that's going to help you bounce back from no matter what challenge life throws at you. Player cannot perform up to his or her potential unless they can eradicate their negative self-talk and self-doubts. So if you don't address it, the other way, work you do. So if you don't address it, the other work you do on whether it's improving focus, whether it's just looking at building confidence or practicing really hard at your game, it will amount to some sort of underachievement, because negative self-talk, self-doubt is one of the biggest reasons a player can really sort of lose a winning game. And we've seen this in several matches across all the sports that we've seen at. So whether it's cricket, tennis, golf, or any other aspect of your life, or whether it's giving an exam, those self-doubts can really plague your mind. So what you want to do is that remember that this negative inner voice will override any massive amounts of positive thinking. And overcoming self-doubt requires action. So work with a coach, work with a professional psychologist who can help you destroy these self-doubts for good. Sometimes you need to go back to the root of where this is coming from. So like I mentioned in the my client who was a national level badminton player, we had to go back to the root of that game where he lost in a really important match and he felt it was all his responsibility. So we need to go back to the root from where it's coming. So it's no secret that success, whether in sports or life, requires you to believe in yourself, but that also requires you to destroy negative self-doubt. So I'm here now to answer any questions that you have on overcoming self-doubts.
All right, ma'am, we have few questions. So I'll just go to them one by one for you. Am I audible clearly?
Yes.
All right. Mm, so one person has said, like when you were talking about self doubt, if you have a series of losses, then self doubt is rational. So how to cope up with that?
Okay, how to cope up with that? Okay, so that's a very pertinent point because self doubt, like I said, comes from either experiences that we're having, and here in this case, the person has written, a series of losses. Now, what he needs to think about is that the more he thinks about the losses, is not going to get him to win. He needs to go from this self doubt to a winning mindset. And what is this winning mindset is something that we'll need to maybe have another session on. But to look at what was it that made him lose those matches. That's where the knowledge is. What was it that he was doing that or she was doing that didn't have their performance level at the optimum? So was it not having adequate practice? Was it like feeling pressured by the opponent? Was it the manipulation that they felt during the game? It could be many things. So it's important to go back and look at those things and learn from it rather than focusing on just losing the match. Focus on what happened during the match that led to that outcome. And that's where the lessons will come.
All right. The next question, can you talk about sportsman spirit to overcome self doubt?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Yes.
All right. So, can you talk about sportsman spirit to overcome the self doubt?
Sportsman spirit to overcome self-doubt. So a sportsman is somebody, a sportsman's spirit, in my opinion, is someone who celebrates his wins as well as takes his losses in his stride. So I think a key element for a quality sportsman is that when he loses, instead of blaming the situation and the opponent or at other faults, is to take it in his stride and say, you know what, I'm going to go back, work harder, and come back harder to win the next game. And in order to overcome self doubt, it's again, instead of thinking about, I can't win again, I'm not good enough, I should, drop out of this sport, is to go back and look at, what can I do to get better? What can I do to achieve my optimum potential? Talk to your coaches, talk to your mentors. They're the ones who will be able to guide you because they're seeing you at practice, they're seeing you while you're competing. Often there might be a difference in the way you're playing during a practice session and the way you play during competition. And an observer who's seeing you in both situations would be able to tell you something, offer you some insights that you may not realize since you're in it yourself.
All right. Ma'am, as you spoke about self talk for, for ignoring the negative thoughts,
Yes.
what are the other aspects that we can do to ignore negative thoughts that affects our mind during playing golf or hitting a particular shot?
Right. So in self-talk, I gave three techniques. And like I said, say to yourself what you want to hear from a friend. Say to yourself what you would like to hear from your coach or from a loved one. That is really, really important because, when you're playing a sport, you're by yourself and you need to learn how to motivate yourself because you won't have someone at your access all the time. So find these statements that work for you and use those at the time to uplift yourself. And also, like I said, reminding yourself of past achievements, whatever big or small achievement, whatever you consider an achievement. An achievement doesn't always mean having a cup at the end of a match or at the end of a competition. An achievement could be anything that is something that you consider personal success. So if you've really worked hard on correcting your grip or a swing or getting a certain technique right, that is also an achievement. So remind yourself of that and incorporate that into your self talk.
All right. The next question, ma'am.
Or you can work, or if you feel like that there are too many self doubts on various levels on your abilities, your capabilities, your self worth, it really helps to either work with your coach to dissect them or to work with a professional psychologist like myself or any sports psychologist you have access to talk to a professional who has techniques available to work it through, step by step to help you sort of demolish these doubts once and for all.
All right, ma'am. The next question: how can we meditate to clear out the mind?
There are loads of meditation techniques available. There are lots of audio clips available as well. So, meditation is basically a way to get in touch with your inner self. It's also a way to sort of pause all the noise that's going on in your mind. So, you can use any meditation technique that you would like to. And over time, you will see you will have higher concentration, higher focus, and more control over what you're thinking about.
All right.
And there are lots of apps available as well, like Headspace, Calm. There are lots of free audios available on YouTube for a person to meditate. So you can literally use anything that works for you. So anything from 3 minutes going up to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, work your way, your time up. You don't have to sit down and do 15 minutes on day one. Start with just meditating for 3 minutes. That's going to be powerful as well.
All right, ma'am. The next question: can you share some of the concentration building or mental strength exercises that can be practiced also while playing or during the lockdown period at home?
Yeah.
So,
So I think doing a concentration exercise during practice might be hard, but I can tell you one that you can do now sitting at home. So ideally, what you want to do is, you can have a candle flame and keep that about 2 feet away from you at eye level, but make sure there's no curtain or no fabric around it. You don't use any deo or anything inflammable that the flame can go out. And once you have that candle flame, dim the room, so dim the lights, close the curtains, and just sit there and look at the flame and keep your mind, keep your thoughts on that flame. So if you have outside thoughts coming in, let them leave, but keep your focus only on the flame in front of you. And that's a great exercise for building concentration, focus. It's also a great exercise just to really calm your nerves as well. If you're feeling very anxious, if you're feeling restless, you can do this at the time and you'll really feel a sense of calm.
all right. The next question is from a parent. His son always keeps complaining after losing a tournament. So, what can he do about it? I mean, regarding that complaint issue.
Yes. So, so if the son is complaining for some amount of time, is totally okay because naturally he's feeling bad. He's put in effort, worked hard towards winning a game, and he hasn't got what he was expecting. So it's totally okay for the son to complain and whine and vent about it. And what a parent should typically do at the time is to listen and empathize. You don't want to at that point tell your son that, oh look, I knew you weren't working hard enough, or you weren't practicing. You're so distracted these days. You should just leave social media and just focus only on your game. Statements such as those at that point isn't going to be helpful, but at that point, just to empathize, to let your son know that you understand what he's feeling terrible, and you're there for him unconditionally for anything, for anything that he needs of you. I think that empathy and support can be very, very powerful in supporting the son and how he feels after losing a game.
All right. Ma'am,
If
the
a
next
parent has
question.
observations, and I'd also like to add here that a lot of parents are very dedicated. They go and watch all the matches. If you have any observations, note it down and discuss it at another time. It's not always helpful to discuss it immediately after a match which he hasn't won, because he's anyway feeling terrible and he's not feeling great about himself. So he may not be very receptive to any suggestions at that time, but note down those observations and have a conversation with him later on where it's more constructive.
All right. Ma'am, the next question. Can you suggest any tips to overcome the loss of a point in a game and get back, like the instant boost of that focus point?
Yeah. I think an instant boost that works really well is to think about the other times when you have turned your game around. And that's why I said think about these times right now and note it down. Like note it down on a post-it and just put it up in your room. Note it down in like a little diary that you have for your game. So those times when you performed really well, where when you like changed from a losing position and moved on to a winning position. What were the things you did at that time? Can really help give you an instant boost that what, you can still get back in the game. That's basically what you want to feel, and say to yourself that till the game isn't over, you've got the game in your hands, in your control. So thinking about these past achievements, these past performances can really help at that point.
All right. How can we build self confidence inside our mind, inside us?
Self confidence is another really big topic. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer it in one or two points. So perhaps we can take this as feedback and do another session on building self confidence. Because I think for players, confidence plays a huge role, and especially during competitions and or anything that they need to do. So I would perhaps reserve a comment now and bring it on during another interactive session like this, where we can talk about building confidence. I hope that's okay.
Sure, ma'am. Uh, so, is there any different techniques for meditating apart from whatever you suggested?
No, I think meditation, yeah, there are like plenty of meditation techniques. There's even pranayam, which is just breathing. So you basically want to do anything that can help you have a blank slate of mind. So, and by focusing on zero thoughts. So by focusing either on your breath, is a way of meditating or listening to something. So audio meditations are easier because it helps you take your mind and your body into a state of calm slowly and gradually. Or having something to focus on is also very helpful.
All right. Um, Ma'am, how to increase the mental support to your child before an important event?
So talking to your child about their strengths before an important event, saying all those things to your child that motivates them, that boosts them is very, very important. You want to steer away from adding any pressure or creating expectations from the child. So having expectations, creating pressure actually has shown in research that it affects players mindset while they're playing. So an easy way to increase support is just talking about their strengths, getting them to think about all the hard work and their practice sessions, and that they're ready for the event. And they have all those resources in their mind and body, and they just need to give their best. I think saying little is very effective in a time like that, rather than getting into a long lecture.
All right. The next question, ma'am. How to overcome the intimidation by other players during a game?
Okay. So again, so this again comes from, it's a part of self-doubt, because, if you think another player is, very skilled or is a ranked player, that whole thing can really start getting into you feeling that you're not good enough. So ideally, you want to build your reservoir of enough confidence where your self doubts are low, where you don't get into having this manipulation and letting the other player get into your mind. Because the moment they enter your mind, it will translate onto your performance on the golf course or in any court that you're playing.
All right.
So,
Ma'am,
and also like think about, there's so many matches that we've seen. So at least like for me, I'm a tennis fan. So I see a lot of tennis matches, and we've seen sometimes like non-ranked players have really sort of shocked us with the game, right? Where they've beaten like world number one, world number two. So anything is possible. And that's what you need to tell yourself, that today might be your day and you're ready with yourself to give your best performance because you worked hard this entire season. You've practiced on yourself. So, focusing on yourself at the time is what is really important rather than thinking about the other person and your opponent. The more you think about your opponent, you're losing time from focusing on your game and on what you want from that game.
all right. Ma'am, the next question. At what stage do you think should a budding player hire the services of a psychologist?
Um, so this is a tricky question because I think it depends a lot on what is going through the mind of this budding player, right? So I think more than the stage, what's important is to look at what is the mindset of the player, irrespective of the stage they're at, because you can be at any stage, but it depends on whether you're getting manipulated by your opponents, whether you're getting caught up in self-doubt, whether you feel that you can't handle the pressure of your team or you can't handle the pressure of the game, or whether, when you're winning and you have a lead, you can't then handle the pressure of sustaining that. So it really depends on what the mindset of the player is, and use the services depending on your requirements and your needs.
Um, all right. The next question, ma'am. What are your views on subliminal messages?
Subliminal messages is basically the subconscious mind, the messages we're putting into the subconscious mind. So it is the most important thing because it's our subconscious mind which is controlling us today. It's like think about the times when you're hitting a golf shot, or when you're typing. Are you specifically telling yourself, how to, what are the letters of your name, or do you write it automatically? You write it automatically. When you're standing there and you're planning a golf shot, your swing, your muscle memory remembers how to do it, and you swing automatically. So you're not teaching yourself at the point. So all of this information is all already fed into your subconscious mind. So subliminal messages that we're saying to ourselves, is paramount in any human being, in any individual. And often self doubts are also something that manifests at a subconscious level. Hence, is why I'm saying constantly is that you need to work on it consistently, day in, day out, dissect it, find the root of where these doubts are coming from so you can really eradicate it once and for all.
All right. Ma'am, it is said that pressure is bound to be there anyhow. So, which one player needs to learn to feed on? So, can you elaborate on that point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. question, because pressure is something that isn't something that always affects our performance negatively. It's also something that helps us really push in that adrenaline and gets us to work harder. So pressure can be very motivating. So I think what's important is for any person is to learn and understand how is pressure affecting them. So some people can handle it, some people can't. Like for someone like me, I thrive on pressure. So when I have a deadline, my mind focuses much better. I'm more productive, and the same task takes me like much lesser time to complete. So everybody has like an inner technique and certain skills which they use to handle pressure. So learn that, and also learn how to use pressure to your advantage to get you to perform at your optimal level rather than making you underperform.
All right. Ma'am, how can we accept the responsibility of our own game?
Like responsibility in what way? Could the person elaborate, perhaps?
Whoever has asked this question, we request you to please be more specific and elaborate on your question. So, ma'am, for now, we don't have any other questions as of now.
Okay.
All right. There's one question, ma'am. I'll just read it
Yes.
out for you. Can you share your experiences with any players regarding self doubts and managing them?
Yes, I did share one of my clients. Another one, I mean, I've worked with a lot of people, so I can't really pinpoint one, but it's again these doubts that kind of come from experiences. So what I've really found very useful in my work with players, especially, is to really have these three areas to focus your doubts on. One is to identify pre-game, one is post-game, and the most important one is what is happening during the game and what are these statements that are coming in. And often, I've worked with players who are just amateurs, and I've worked with national level players as well. And they all have similar doubts. Sometimes, the pressure of the team, the pressure of, sustaining your rank or being, kind of keeping up with your reputation also gets very, very overwhelming. So it's just important to learn how to manage your emotions at the time, because we know how strongly our mind and body is connected. We know that the moment like we start feeling the stress, we start feeling jittery or angry. When you feel angry, on court when you're playing or on the fields, that anger also translates into your shots. So you lose control over the ball or the shuttlecock, or on the way you want to hit a shot, or the decision you're making about court movement. So like let's say typically in badminton, whether you should like be hitting from behind or whether you should go up to the net. So I think the entire thing is very the psyche and the way a person is using their mindset is so important in athletes and in sports, that is really worth understanding it for yourself and improving on yourself.
All right, ma'am. The question that one a person had asked, how to accept responsibility of your game. So he
Yes.
has written again regarding the victory after the round.
Regarding the victory after the round, yeah, I guess celebrate your victory and I mean, I don't quite understand what do you mean by accept responsibility at the end of victory, to
Uh,
celebrate yourself.
Most probably, ma'am.
Yeah, but I think yes, of course, you should celebrate yourself, because every victory is a sign of your hard work, your perseverance, your persistent working. So it's very important to acknowledge that, and it's also important to acknowledge and give dues to people who help you. So like your coach, your mentor, any family members or friends who are very supportive. It's just nice to share that joy and acknowledge people for their contribution towards your success. your victory.
All right. There's one question. Any charts or something like that to make notes for the kids so that they feel more confident?
Any charts? You
Are
mean?
are any charts available to make notes, make self notes?
Um, I mean, you can have, you can, it just a chart can be made based on whatever it is that you require. So let's say a chart can be made of, two different headings. One can be of things I think a lot about. So what is it that your child is constantly thinking a lot about, which is not helping him or her, and have like supplementary things of things I need to think about. So you will notice often that our mind tends to focus a lot more on negative things and it kind of starts spiraling down. And that's no good for anybody, right? It's not going to help you increase performance. It's not going to help you feel better. It's not going to help you succeed. Instead, you want to transform all of that to more uplifting and positive statements about yourself so that you feel more motivated to working harder and improving your skill set. But I think if you look in, go on to Pinterest, you might find a lot of, cool charts that can be used for children in sports. There's a lot of information available. Yeah,
All
like
right.
worksheets. So you can perhaps like just Google worksheets for child athletes or golfers, youth golfers. I think you might find something.
All right. How can we control the anger that we get after a bad game for about 2 to 3 days?
Again, anger is a huge topic, very difficult to finish it in a couple of minutes, like we're doing right now in this interaction. So maybe we can do another session on anger. But just to let you know something is that is to know that yes, it is natural to feel angry with yourself, but it's also important for you to accept that you are angry and then let go and move on from that. Because the more you hold on to anger, it's not going to sort of help you in any way. It's only going to make you feel cocooned, it's going to make you feel like worse about yourself. And that's not going to help translate in your game. But, so if you felt angry at yourself, it's okay, accept it, but then you need to bounce out from that and say, you know what do I need to do to work harder? How can I fix my game? How do I bounce back even stronger?
All right, ma'am. We have one last question.
Remember that,
Teenage.
it's okay to feel angry, but it's not okay to hurt someone when angry.
Yes, ma'am. So, teenage players often do not get the importance of mental training. So, they do not get it. How can they be motivated regarding mental training?
So I think the sports psychology is an upcoming field, and coaches, psychologists in general, they do work with motivation. So I have worked with lots of people in my career regarding like just making them feel more motivated. So their motivation could come from for a teenager and adolescent, it could come from towards their studies. For somebody it could come for prepping for major exams like board exams or the SATs. Motivation also translates to job applications and doing interviews one after the other. So motivation is a key skill that we all need to have. And you can work with a coach, a mentor, or a psychologist individually and find techniques to motivate yourself. And once you learn these techniques, that can be something that you can use for the rest of your life. So it's not that you have to be signed up with someone forever. Is you do a few sessions, learn these techniques, and then apply it. And if you don't have access to someone like that, go on YouTube and look at videos. Today, there are so many people out there sharing their knowledge, sharing information, and go online and find these videos where people are talking about motivation, where they're talking about bouncing back from hardships and failures. I think, these are resources as well that you can tap into.
All right. So, Ma'am, someone has asked, after victory,
Yes.
we get overconfident.
Yes.
So, how can we cope up regarding that? How to control that
Okay.
excitement,
So
control that mind?
yeah. So again, I'd like, this would again come as part of like doing a confidence interaction, like the way we're having today. But remember that victory is something, it takes you to a peak. And a lot of players, a lot of people, sort of competing or in the professional life as well, talk about the pressure of sustaining that peak rather than having to build themselves up to the peak. So overconfidence will lead to you being, you being more content with your game. Perhaps it will lead you to, lesser practice, lesser, hard work and motivation towards it. So perhaps feel good about yourself, but being overconfident can definitely again affect your game. And you don't want that to happen in the next round. You want to maintain your level, you want to maintain your peak performance. So celebrate yourself, but not at the risk of hurting yourself.
All right, ma'am.
So I see
We'll
that as a. I did want to just share my screen for a moment with all the viewers, so they have some contact details from my end. Can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
ma'am. If you can make it a full screen, yeah,
yes, I
that's
have.
fine.
So yes, I'd love to stay connected with all of you. So please connect on my pages, Counseling New Leaf and Innercraft Official on Facebook. You'll find me there and we can always stay in touch. And if any of you would like to work individually or with your team or with any organizations during this time, do get in touch with me. My number is on the screen as well, and so is my email address. So feel free to reach out to me. And I've really had such a good time interacting with all of you today. And I hope that we get more opportunities to do this in future.
Sure, ma'am. Um, ma'am, am I audible?
Yes,
All right. There was one last question, then we can end this session if you want to
sure.
take this question. All right. What is the scope of sports psychology in India right now? So, are there any institutions that are doing it, or
Um, I I'm not sure about the institution name that's doing sports psychology, but I think Pearl Academy in Bombay has a course. I'm not sure. So I've studied in the UK, my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in psychology. So um, I'm not very well aware of sports psychology in India at this point. There are lots of universities offering psychology degrees. Sports psychology is more upcoming and it's really come into the foray and the forefront in the last few years. And I definitely see it as a very, very lucrative and a great career to be in. Especially, we are seeing sports coming to like a paramount in the forefront in India. So it started with IPL cricket. Cricket has always been huge, but there's also leagues for football now and hockey. And, so I think all these various sporting leagues are going to come on, and every team, every player will need like a sports psychologist to work with, So, you have players abroad working with people one on one. And I think, in India, we're not far behind. There are many people doing it already. And I think it's a great career to be in, especially if you love sports and you love working with humans. It's fantastic.
all right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for doing the session with us. And thank you, everyone, for attending the session presented by CFL. You can, if you want to get the rerun of this session, you can get it in the YouTube channel Champ for Life Academy. Please subscribe to the channel and you'll get the update on this session also in a couple of days. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for doing the session with us.
Thank you so much, Sia, and thank you, Indrajit, for having me here and address Champs for Life. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you so much. I hope you all stay safe, stay healthy, stay productive during the lockdown, and make sure it doesn't get into your mind. I do have some fabulous videos to help people through mental health and various issues that they're dealing with. So on YouTube, if you go onto Inner Craft, which is K Craft with a K, You will find a link to all my videos there regarding COVID-19 and how we can control our mindset and stay upbeat.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
We'll end this session right now.
Okay.